Of lawmakers, including our next guest, to hammer out a deal over wall funding. So how'd it go? GOP Arizona Congressman Andy Biggs joins us now. Congressman, good morning. Thank you for joining us. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you.
Congressman, take us inside. You were just looking live at the White House. Take us inside that meeting. What was the conversation?
Well, let me just tell you that we had a good group of people around the table. Vice President, Senator Shelby, Senator Graham, Senator Mike Lee of Utah, myself, Mark Meadows, Jim Jordan, and Matt Gaetz from Florida. We had Mick Mulvaney. We had everybody, and Jared Kushner and the president, of course. Well, what we really came away focused on is how important it is to build this border wall, and the president is committed to that. And I think he came in, he came in locked in, he came out locked in, and the reality is this is a national security issue, it's a humanitarian issue, whether it's stopping drug trafficking or human smuggling. So this is a real issue, and you can't just give lip service to it. You actually have to build the wall, because we know that walls work. So that was the conversation, I would guess, that I want to say is the commitment of the president.
You talk about commitment. Did you get a sense, did the president say anything to you guys in that meeting that would indicate how long the president is prepared to go? We know Congress isn't going to be back until now, 2 days after Christmas, but how long is he willing to go?
Well, I don't know that we specifically talked about timelines with regard to that. I think these shutdowns tend to have a cycle where everybody gets enthusiastic, then they get a little nervous, and then in the reality, if you look back to the Clinton Gingrich shutdown, Stephanopoulos himself said they were within 24 hours of President Clinton caving on that and going, but instead the Congress blinked. I think this is a tough one, because Senator Schumer said he doesn't want to give anything to the building a wall, and that makes it very difficult.
Are you concerned as a member of the House that if this lasts beyond January 3rd, when Speaker-designate Nancy Pelosi takes over, it's going to be more difficult to achieve the president's goals on border security?
Well, I am concerned that if we go past January 3rd and this is our last best chance, because after Nancy Pelosi takes over, she has said that she's not going to put a dime to border wall. She's okay with open borders now. She used to be for border security and border walls. She's not so much now, and that's because she's going to the left-wing part of her conference so much, and she needs the votes, and she's really close on the votes, and so she has to deliver on this.
Going back into that meeting that you attended at the White House, did you get a sense whether or not the president is willing to meet? We're talking about roughly $3 billion difference to get there between the president's demand for $5 billion for wall construction to the $1.3 where this all started with an offer bipartisan manner. Is there a sense that the president would meet in the middle?
Well, I don't, without getting into what the president's willing to do or not do, I will just tell you this. That meeting broke up so the president's representatives could actually go participate and negotiate some more. So he is negotiating, but he also understands this wall is important, not just to keep a campaign promise, but to protect the security of this nation.
All right, Congressman Biggs, thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing as these negotiations continue.
With much of the government shut down at least through Christmas, with Defense Chief Jim Mattis leaving, with U.S. troops pulling out of Syria, with stock market sharply declining, the media are now pushing this narrative. As described by the Washington Post, Trump single-handedly propelled the U.S. government into crisis and set markets tumbling. Politico says Trump allies are privately expressing new levels of concern about the president's erratic behavior. Some pundits on the right joined in the criticism when the president agreed to a stopgap funding compromise with zero money from the wall. And under pressure from House conservatives, Trump then vowed not to sign any bill without that funding, leading to this weekend's partial shutdown. Joining us now to analyze the coverage, Molly Hemingway, senior editor at The Federalist and a Fox News contributor. Sarah Fisher, media reporter for Axios. And Philippe Reines, a former State Department official under Hillary Clinton. Molly, some stories are saying we have a partial government shutdown because Donald Trump was cowed and coerced by conservative commentators on Fox, by Rush Limbaugh, by Ann Coulter, who hammered him for initially going along with that stopgap funding bill. that wouldn't have funded the wall at all.
Well, and that's because Donald Trump himself said that he believed border security was important enough that if it weren't funded, if this wall weren't funded, he would take credit for a government shutdown. And then it sounded like maybe there was some backtracking on that. So absolutely conservative media pushed back because they wanted to make sure that he wasn't backtracking. And here we are. So it's a good reflection that the people's sentiment was somehow expressed in the media, either through conservative media or otherwise.
Interesting. So, Philippe, it's not every week that Fox and Friends, the president's favorite show, criticizes Trump. In this case, on both issues, Syria, which we'll get to, and the wall and the shutdown maneuvering. Is it that certain pundits on the right are so all-powerful, or are they seen as reflecting the views of Trump's base, which, as we know, are very important to him?
Well, from my perspective as a Democrat who comes into the belly of the beast pretty often, it seems to me that what triggers Republican on Republican violence is usually immigration. And I think the problem is that Molly just touched on is that the president is not a hardcore believer in much of anything to the extent that he has no problem coming off these things. So it happened with DACA, where you saw another one of these meetings where
you compromise and then we don't
compromise and don't, and you see the Republicans in the room are wincing, and you see it with Chuck and Nancy last week. And I think it brings up two. One is the conservative, but also brings that these are self-inflicted wounds. The president is so used to wanting cameras that he brings them into times that there shouldn't be cameras.
And speaking of Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, and Molly, you just referenced this, question for you, Sarah. I want to play the soundbite that is being endlessly replayed by the media of that meeting less than 2 weeks ago.
I am proud to shut down the government for border security, Chuck. I will take the mantle. I will be the one to shut it down. I'm not going to blame you for it.
So now that the president is blaming the Democrats for the shutdown, the media kind of enjoying him being boxed in by his earlier words and the current partisan battle.
That's right, with some even comparing this to George H.W. Bush's read my lips, no new taxes. When you verbally promise something to the American people with cameras involved, you have to be ready for any kind of pushback when you go back from your word. And that's exactly what Donald Trump is facing right now, with his base and conservative members of the media saying, wait a minute, that's not what you just did and said last week.
The withdrawal of the 2,000 troops from Syria was portrayed in the press as kind of a shocker, but Trump did say during the campaign and since that, he is opposed to extended or endless military entanglements overseas. Is he up against essentially a media establishment that favors military intervention?
Absolutely. And we saw this. I mean, it's actually kind of a crisis. When you're seeing all these stories about pulling back our troop presence in Syria, you're getting nothing but quotes from people who think that we should have perpetual presence in Syria. Now, that is true that a lot of people in the foreign policy establishment all think the same way. They all supported, lengthy intervention in Iraq and Afghanistan, which is on 17 years now.
Yes.
And they are for, now that we've accomplished our stated mission in Syria, they're trying to change the stated mission from military defeat of ISIS into enduring defeat of ISIS, which is something that could mean that we will be there for 17 years. So you're not getting a lot of diversity of viewpoint, and it's a serious problem, and it's something that media people need to make sure they're getting that viewpoint from people who don't believe in endless intervention in Syria.
And the president justified this by saying ISIS has been defeated or largely defeated. Seems to me liberals have to be restrained on this because Barack Obama, you worked in that administration, pulled out of Iraq, got hammered by the right for it, and he also in a way shared Donald Trump's aversion to endless war in these far-flung places.
I don't think this is high-minded of a debate about where the U.S. should be deployed. I think this is more simply about, first of all, it's congressional Republicans, which is basically Donald Trump's firewall, that he has on occasion basically dared to leave him, first with Charlottesville, then with now with this, but with the Saudi killing. He is leaving them no choice but to criticize him. I don't think that's an intervention or non-intervention thing. It is, don't trifle with the people who are doing your bidding, who have your back.
By that logic, he's also leaving certain conservative commentators with no choice, who believe in differently than he does on this.
I actually think one of the problems we've seen in media coverage has been this perception that Republicans only disagree with him. You have multiple senators who are supporting him, including Senator Mike Lee and Senators Rand Paul. You have people on both sides of the aisle who do not believe that we should have this perpetual presence.
So is it that the press is playing up the Lindsey Grahams and Bob Corkers who are denouncing Trump?
But even more than that, only 18% of Americans last year supported having troops in Syria. And Tim Kaine, my senator from Virginia, has been trying to get a new resolution passed to support this endless situation in Syria, and he's had no success. So I think this is a false narrative that's being perpetuated.
But don't belittle, Lindsey Graham said this is a stain on his presidency.
Lindsey Graham has never found a country he doesn't want to.
Okay, but Lindsey Graham golfs with the president. He is his biggest defender on Mueller. These are significant things, and there's a difference between Congress and the media.
Sorry, Sarah. Let me move on from Lindsey Graham to Jim Mattis.
Yes.
Because look, widely respected. His leaving is a very big story, but is the press going a little overboard and portraying him as the last man standing between Donald Trump and the collapse of the Western Alliance?
Of course. I mean, we have a large Defense Department. We have a large defense infrastructure. However, he was viewed as one of the biggest sounding boards and one of the most fundamental rocks when it comes to foreign policy. And so him leaving does scare a lot of people. Going back to your point, though, about media and how they're taking a look at this, I was watching CNN this morning. They had Bob Corker on and they had Rand Paul on. I think that we have to make sure that we're watching each individual show and taking into account which views they put on. It's not always so one-sided.
And just one other thing I want to mention, not all the media coverage has been bad. I think it was a CNN story or somewhere where I read that 8 months ago, Donald Trump told General Mattis, we need to be out of Syria within 6 months. 8 months ago. So learning some of the context of this situation.
This isn't about
that
Syria.
Trump, who has been for years saying we need to get out of Syria.
I want to take a look at the bigger picture. I didn't know about the 18% supporting remaining in Syria. Things are pretty volatile. It's been a pretty rough week. Washington's pretty rattled. New York is rattled. What about the media just making this all one big bowl of Trumpian chaos? I'm watching the banners on CNN and MSNBC, and they're all like, shutdown looms as Mattis resigns as stock market tanks, or stock market tanks as Mattis resigns as shutdown looms. And CNN's favorite is Trump tailspin. What do you make of it's all Trump?
With the stock market, the idea that the Fed's action this week doesn't play a role in that is
raising interest rates.
Even when you take the issue on the shutdown, yes, it is true that Donald Trump is forcing this issue. It's also true that it's been forced by inaction among both parties, both houses, and this is something that that by noticing it doesn't mean you're the cause of the problem. By saying we finally have to deal with it doesn't mean you're the cause of the problem. It just means you're saying this has to get done.
Philippe, is the coverage of the Syrian pullout influenced by the fact that essentially Trump style? He did this against the advice of many White House aides. He overruled Mattis. He didn't tell his congressional allies. He didn't tell allies in foreign capitals. And so does that add to the media sense of alarm?
I think when you couple Syria with the firing of Mattis, because they really are the same thing, you have this dynamic that I don't subscribe to, that Jim Mattis was some kind of like blankie where it made everyone feel better at night. And it shouldn't have. And I think there's some psychology going on.
Now, four-star general who believes in the defense alliances.
Sure. 2 weeks ago, he went up to the Senate Intelligence Committee and said there was no connection between the killing and their intelligence.
Well, I'm not saying you have to agree with everything Mattis does.
No, but I'm saying that to have vested so much in him as this last line of defense against Trump, I think is more about the people saying that than the reality of it.
Do the media, Sarah, reflect the foreign policy establishment's view on many of these issues? We saw this, Molly alluded to this, Afghanistan, Iraq, now Syria, that more military intervention, more troops is better, it's a good fight against terrorism, and less reflecting the views maybe of many Trump supporters, which is, why are we spending American tax dollars to constantly be in these places for decades?
I think absolutely. When you bring on tons of foreign policy experts to talk about what the implications are for diplomacy for us in doing something like that, but you're not bringing on moms and dads of people who are waiting for their kids to come home, I do think it does skew the coverage in that bit to be a little bit more
Well, not just that, but there are many foreign policy leaders who actually do support this idea, and you want to bring in those voices as well as average Americans.
Yes, and to your point, though,
but including Congress.
Yeah, but there are people from
There are people in
Congress. I mean,
Congress
we
who
saw-
also don't
But
believe
they
we
were
should
all,
be in Syria.
but they were all taken by surprise.
And if they wanted to be there, they could very easily pass a resolution saying we should be there. And
But if
for
you're
how
going to
long and how
criticize
much money
Barack
it will
Obama
take.
for sort of just putting us in there and not having enough of a discussion about it, you can't say that Donald Trump had an adequate discussion about pulling out. It's not as simple as keeping a campaign promise.
To get to a break, this debate is not over by any means.
So Vicky is on tour now. She's going to Tacoma. Oh, Tacoma. I used to live by there. Now it's been 30 years, but
So pretty.
yeah, it's beautiful and a lot of trailer people. A lot of
I
trailer
can't
people.
wait.
You love it. Then you're going to Portland?
Yeah.
Are you crazy?
I'm excited to the Portlandia where it
Really?
stays weird. The Voodoo Donuts. Yep.
Good luck.
Women and Women First.
Good
You
luck
go to
on
Women
that.
and Women First while you're there. Have you seen- oh, you'd love that.
What's that?
It's the Portlandia is the show. It's a sketch
Yeah.
comedy
Yeah.
show,
Yeah.
and
So
they're I don't know. Maybe their most famous sketch is a feminist bookstore.
Yes.
Oh,
which
yeah,
is a real bookstore
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
and it's insane. I love that sketch.
It's going to be, yeah, I'm so excited.
Then Nashville, Tennessee at Zanies. Huntsville, Alabama, the Stand Up Live, Stardome Comedy Club in Hoover, Alabama.
I can't wait to get there.
Naples, Florida, Off the Hook, and then Rochester, New York, comedy at the Carlson. That's just in January.
Yeah. And then, yeah, it's crazy fun. I mean, I'm really excited about going around. It's what I always dreamed of doing. People go, are you tired because you're the sexy one? I'm like, no, I get so much energy. It was really fun here in Texas. And then I'll be in San Antonio tomorrow night, which is a dream for me, like a bucket list thing.
So I would imagine some people compare you to kind of Roseanne.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that?
Well, all fat people look alike, and she did. She did live in a trailer, and we have brown hair. And in fact, when I first met her, she left the Comedy Store before I came into the Comedy Store, and I always was worried when she saw me, would she feel that I'm, hacking her? But I was doing this show called Funniest Mom in America. She was the host. I was like, holy crap, she's going to, is she here the night I auditioned? They said no. And then I heard this hacking laugh, and I knew it was her. And she came up to me, and she was so kind. She said, I love you. And she totally got that we were different. And I wrote for her, and she was really good to me.
You did write for her? Wow.
So it was wonderful, yeah.
I hear she's not easy to work with.
I just realized we weren't going to be best friends because she was who she was. She was, Roseanne, and I was just little me.
Right.
So I would just send her this stuff, and she would send me a check, and she was kind, and she had me open for her in Vegas once, and it was, she was.
So
really good.
are you somebody who? You win the $1 million or whatever it is, and you're a big, huge star, and you're going cross country. What's going to change about you?
I don't know that that's much going to change. I think because this big success hit me when I'm 60. I think that it's just different than if you hit your earlier. I mean, I got my grandkids a go-kart for Christmas. That was like a dream come true. I'm going to say that. But other than that, I mean, like, I'm not leaving my trailer. I might get another trailer in LA when I'm working there, but I've been so happy doing stand up. I've been just so happy the last 20 years.
What did you do before that?
I worked for my parents' carpet store for 20 years. I mean, it was crazy. I mean, it was just, my parents it was the craziest time. And that's why comics go, comedy's a struggle. It's so hard. I'm like, try working at a carpet store with your crazy parents for 20 years.
Because they would sleep at the carpet
literally.
store.
Our carpet shop was attached to a liquor store. Literally, by the wall was a liquor store. The wall, liquor store, us. So my parents, we would start drinking in the afternoon. They'd pass out about 9 o'clock when we closed. People would come in the morning. The door wasn't locked. They'd just walk into the shop. Mom and Dad would be sprawled out on the carpet rolls. Are you open? Oh, yeah. Can we help you? There was not even a blink. And we sold only seconds and irregulars. I mean, you only shop there if you were desperate or super rich. And, it was my dad every morning had a pep talk in his office. I'm going to hire nothing but a-holes. I'm going to take an ad under A. That was our morning pitch. It was.
What brought you to California?
My dad started. He managed carpet stores when I was little, and they moved him every year. And finally, when I was 19, he opened up our first shop in Oceanside, and that's where we stayed.
And how long have you lived in California then?
I've lived in Oceanside for 40 years.
40 years.
Yeah.
California. I grew up on the West Coast. I grew up in Seattle.
Yeah.
And California 40 years ago is not California today. It's nuts.
It is nuts. I swear, my little enclave of Oceanside is protected by Camp Pendleton Marine Corps Base, which I love because, at any given day, there's 30,000 gorgeous Marines walking around. I think because we have the base there, our town stays a similar, it doesn't gentrify to the level of the other beach towns around us. So I'm just so grateful to be in Oceanside. It's a little when I go to LA to work and stuff, it's like,
yeah.
But for where we are, it's like a secret little spot. It's going to change.
I think it is with San Diego as well. It just, Camp Pendleton changes the seals and it just stops the insanity a little bit.
Yeah. I'm so lucky. And my son-in-law's a retired gunny. So I get to be at the beach at Camp Pendleton on Christmas Day. We always spend Christmas at the beach at Camp Pendleton. I just, and the Marine Corps car washes, ladies, if you visit San Diego, don't go to the zoo. Go to the front gate of Camp Pendleton. You sit in your car. 12 Marines wearing little green shorts wash your car. It's unbelievable.
And that's what you might do for
every Saturday, all summer long.
All summer long.
That's where you will find me.
Right.
Because I'm a giver. Semper Fi.
You're tremendous. You're just tremendous.
Thank you so much for having me on. Big honor.
It is. It's great to see somebody who is pursuing what they love because they love it and for no other reason, and then hitting it. And I'm just thrilled.
No other reason. You have the trailer on the hill.
Well, let's face it.
Yeah. there is that.
I had a double wide dream. And comedy made it come true.
Where can people go to find out where to find you if they missed the dates?
On my Vicki Barbalak Facebook page is always my calendar, and I have a website. It's called VickiBarbalakComedy.com. It's on the brink of teeter, but hopefully it'll work if you guys look into it. VickiBarbalakComedy.com or my Facebook page. Or you can all call me at 760-522.
You also started a new podcast.
Yeah, Vicki Barbalak, Trailer Nasty. And also, I am a ordained wedding minister. I have a business called Wedding Chapel to Go.
Are you a minister of the
of the leopard cloth?
Of the leopard cloth.
Yes. And okay. I offer a $29.95 half-hour honeymoon as part of my service. I have a wedding van. It pops out, and we just do pop-up weddings.
So the 20-minute, did you say honeymoon?
30-minute half-hour honeymoon, $29.95. I've kept that price stable.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's in the back of the van.
And it's a wonderful experience for the happy couple. And you can renew your vows too. And I do a lot of anniversary renewals. I do anniversary parties, and
that's great.
We can also offer the $29.95. For that.
Maybe we should have. Maybe we should have like we do next year. If maybe we could get you back.
Yeah.
We should do like a bowling out. It's not a van,
right?
But we could. It's a national show, so maybe we could do like a bowling alley wedding, and you could officiate.
Absolutely,
that'd be great.
I would love to do that. I have my own bowling shoes and bag.
So you're ready. So let's do that next year. You come back.
Okay.
You can wedding. And we'll find the perfect couple for the bowling alley wedding.
I love it. Somebody's going to want to get married next year in a bowling alley on this show. Keep us in mind.
Yeah. Vicki, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Glenn. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. You can find her at VickiBarbalak.com.